Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. I am BMR. Got a great show in line for you today. I got Krista joining me in the driver's seat as my co-host. Got Steve Stockton. That's right, Steve Stockton humbles us once again. If this is your first time here, please subscribe, give a thumbs up, and hit that alert bell. You can find us on YouTube at Bigfoot Michigan Rob in Texas Front Porch. Don't forget to subscribe to the Blinds and Booze Paranormal Podcast. We're on Odyssey and iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and wherever podcasts are found. Also on KPNL Radio. Thank you to the lovely Selene out there in Oregon for that. Again, you can find us on Facebook at Texas Front Porch. Cryptid Encounters or beyond bmr@gmail.com. Don't forget to subscribe. Brunch. Well, actually, Bigfoot Michigan Rob, Texas Front Porch, and, of course, the Blinds and Booze Paranormal Podcast. The Super Chat is open. Yes, the Super Chat is open. If you are inclined to do so, we do appreciate your support there. If you like our content, want to support us, share us out, tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell whoever is interested in the strange and the paranormal and cryptids or whatever else. Check out our channels and about pages on our YouTube channels. They are there to keep you updated on the schedule. And speaking about the schedule, Mondays is Texas Front Porch at 7:30 in the East. Followed on Tuesdays by Van Buren Variety. That's at 8 in the East. On Tuesdays, Beyond BMR, 9 o'clock in the East. Mysterious Library and Untold Radio, AM, Jason McLean, 10 o'clock in the East. Got to check that out. Wednesdays, Jason McLean Questions Everything, 9 o'clock in the East. Thursdays, back here, Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob, 1 o'clock in the East. And tonight, the Blinds, the Booze, and the Paranormal Podcast. They're tonight, 9 in the East. If you need more woo with the booze, you got them on Fridays, 9 in the East. The Blinds, the Booze, and the woo brings it to you on Friday nights. And don't forget our lovely friend Jessica Jones with Spaced Out Radio, Saturday and Sunday, 10 in the East. Her weekend show is pretty cool. She also has her Cryptid Huntress channel. She's got a lot of great information there too. So go ahead and check her out. With that being said, I'm going to bring up Krista. Krista.
Hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
I'm all right. Besides the fact that I don't have any water right now, I have a water main leak, and they're out there trying to fix it. Other than that, I'm great. I couldn't take a shower this morning, so hopefully I can this afternoon.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm glad that I'm not the one that does not have to take, that needs to, go somewhere else to take a shower. My pipes broke, as everyone knows. I was showering at my brother's like every third day. Finally got that done. Finally got it together. And hopefully our winter storms are past because, Michigan's got the craziest weather.
Oh, yeah.
It snows end of February and beginning of March around here. And back in the day, it used to be November. We used to have white Christmases. Mm-hmm. Now I can sit in the backyard drinking beer and get a suntan. It's amazing.
Right? I know. We're the same way here in Missouri.
So.
And we haven't had much snow here like what we usually have. It's been a mild winter for us here. I know not for you, but for us it has been.
Yeah, and it's crazy because typically here, though, it's pretty mild. Again, I remember being a little kid playing around in the snow, building snow forts, Frosty the Snowman. We don't even get enough snow to do that as a kid because that was so fun to do as a kid. Right. And now we just don't do that.
Oh yeah, I get it.
And then when the snow falls in end of February and March, it's that heavy stuff because it's mixed with the moisture, and it just stinks.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you were talking about the moisture. Well, tonight now, we got a blonde show, and we've got bad storms coming in. It's supposed to hit right about showtime, so I'm hoping my internet. If not, I'll probably log into my phone. I don't know. I'll figure it out.
And I tell you what, that's the most stressful thing when you do live shows. Yeah. Right, because of the internet. All of my lines are still above ground. Yeah. And it's weird. A mile up, they've got the fiber optics. It's underground. Yeah. They never got a problem.
Yep.
And and if they decided to tear up where I live, it would probably take 10 years because I just can't see them tearing down all these phone lines. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
If I ever move, I'm going to a new subdivision, or maybe I'll move up into the mountains.
Right. Well, I already talked to Brandy about it, and she's in the storm area too. So I'm going to probably log into my phone and keep my phone in the background, and then I can
Yeah,
always go back to that if my regular internet peters out on us. So anyway,
awesome.
we'll make it
Yeah,
work.
well, enough of the weather. We've got a man in the back that's
Yep.
been in all sorts of weather throughout his days, and I'm going to bring up right now, make sure he's ready. He looks good to go.
Hey,
Mis-
everybody.
Hey, there's a big thumbs up, Mr.
How you
Steve
doing?
Stockton.
BMR, Krista, good to see you both and be here with you.
Good to see you again.
Yep.
You know-
I'm on with you guys tomorrow night, Krista.
Yeah. We're gonna
Looking
talk
forward to
face tomorrow night.
Indeed, I'm looking forward to that. I got some great stuff cooked up.
Awesome.
Well, that's awesome. It's always great having you on, Steve. And Steve, for everybody listening, it's kind of a last minute thing. I was talking last night. As you know, I've been busy with the house, and then, as a lot of you know, my mom the other day took a spill down the stairs, broke her ankle, and I've got my mom here at my house so I can take care of her. So that was a nightmare, and I thought I had a guest scheduled for today, and I didn't. So I called my buddy Steve. I said, "Man, you got anything going on?" Well, first he tried to look and find somebody, but 12 hours notice is not enough. So he graciously accepted the invite after he exhausted everything that he could, I'm sure.
Yeah,
He's
you're
like,
just
"Well,
like, can you help me find a guest, Steve? So I'm like, okay, he wants me to come on his show. So here I am.
That was just me saying, "Hey, come on. I know you're on last month, but it's never boring when you come on because we talk about a person that's got multitudes of stories from all sides of, I don't care if it's cryptids, the missing,
Agreed.
paranormal. It does not matter. It's always a thrill. It's always exciting." And before we get into that, Steve, I know you got some new things going on. Why don't you walk us through what you got going on lately?
Well, I'm autonomous now. I've got my own missing persons channel, and it's called Steve Stockton's Among the Missing. You can find it on YouTube just as Among the Missing, but the easiest way to go there is atmyt.com. That'll direct you right back to the YouTube page. I was thankful to get a 5-letter domain, atmyt.com, or you just search for Among the Missing on here. Doing the same thing I used to do on that other channel, but bigger and better, and it's all me all the time. So excited about that. Autonomy is a good word.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's perfect. I'm glad how you phrased that, the other channel. And you do have another channel, 13 Past Midnight, if you want to walk through what that's all about.
I've had that one for years. That's my paranormal, my unusual channel, cryptids, a little bit of everything. I do a lot of filler over there too. Like overnight, I'll play the LibriVox recordings of stories they take books, they rescue them out of the public domain. They have volunteer narrators that narrate those stories, and then they release the audio into the public domain. So like last night, I ran about 9 hours of classic mystery and suspense stories from about a century ago. So a lot of stuff over there. And I've got some other stuff in the works. If that's not enough, I've got a UFO channel with Bree, who's in the audience here. We've got a channel called Saucer Cult. And the thing behind that is we like the pre-abduction era stuff, before Travis Walton, before Whitley Strieber, even before Betty and Barney Hill.
Uh-oh.
Got a little glitch in the matrix.
I think so. Sounds like the aliens are listening.
Whenever you bring up aliens, something happens. I don't know if you can hear us, Steve. We can't hear you, and you're frozen. You might want to reboot. I can still hear you, kind of, not really. No.
Yeah.
I don't know if you realize it because you're still talking.
Yeah, probably not.
He probably won't answer his phone.
Dang aliens.
Hang on here. Okay, he found it. Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, that always, whenever you bring up, there he is.
There it is.
How
You're
about
back.
that?
You're
Yeah.
back. We were about to say those dang. Krista said those dang aliens.
Checking my internet here. There we go. I think that should take care of it.
All right, thanks.
But I told Krista backstage, anytime I see that Xfinity truck go down the street, something's going to happen. I think they break stuff just to fix it. But other times when I talk about things that somebody doesn't want me to talk about, that happens too. So who knows?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny. We were just talking about manifesting things because it's like I told you some years ago, April, I put away all my snow equipment, snow blower. I locked it up, put away my shovel. It was April. And just the thought that, yes, no more snow. Then what happened? We got pounded with 8 inches.
Yeah.
Yep. True story.
But I was telling you about saucer cult. Let's see
Yeah.
if the aliens get me this time. Again, I'll kind of start over. We went back and looked at the pre-abduction era stuff. Before Travis Walton, before Whitley Strieber, even before Betty and Barney Hill, when it was fun, when it was flying saucers, when it was little men from Mars, where we're seeing robots coming out of the sky and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we don't have a lot of production content over there. We've been showing public domain UFO movies from the 50s, and those are just as terrible as they sound. But it's kind of a so bad it's good type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Killers from outer space, teenagers from outer space. It was a real thing in the early 50s there, shortly after the Kenneth Arnold sighting over Mount Rainier, and then Roswell came along right behind that. Got the Aztec UFO crash site, which is just about 15 minutes from where I am out here in New Mexico. It's not too far to Roswell. I'm in the place to do UFO stuff.
How far are you from Roswell?
I think Roswell's about an hour and a half, 2 hours.
Oh, wow. Not far at all.
Got plans to go. They're having they have a couple different festivals down there. They just had one. There's another one coming up, I think in June or July. I'm going to be at that one.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool.
Hey, let me ask you, you're talking about Roswell when we get rolling here. What's your thoughts on that whole, you think really is, first of all, do you think that it happened? And do you think that we have aliens currently at that location?
At Roswell?
Yeah.
Or I don't know. I think something happened there. I think there was a cover up. There was a story, Mac Brazel and all those people. And then I'm probably getting them mixed up. I think he was the rancher. But the stuff that they showed, nobody would mistake that for a craft. It did look like a part of a weather balloon, but supposedly what crashed, there was bodies involved, and the Air Force came in and cordoned off the area and hauled things away, bodies, parts of a crashed disc and all this. They wouldn't do that for a weather balloon. I think, you ever get the feeling you've been lied to, as Johnny Lydon said in the Sex Pistols. And the same up here at Aztec. Again, that's just down the road. There's a marker there. They've erected a marker where that crash site was. There was some sort of craft either crashed or landed on the mesa there, depending on who you talk to. And supposedly they carted away the parts. And up to, again, depending on who you talk to, 16 alien bodies. They first took them to Los Alamos National Laboratory, which is here in New Mexico, and then later, allegedly, to Wright-Patterson in Ohio. So New Mexico is just a hotbed. And then, of course, down in Dulce, you got Dulce Base, underground military base. They supposedly have everything from pieces of crashed saucers to bodies there, too. And found this out after I moved here, right here in Farmington, where I live, one of the biggest UFO cases you've probably never heard of. It only recently came to light. It was part of Project Blue Book, but some FOIA requests brought it out recently. 1950, there were 100 silver discs and one red one that flew up and down the Animas River for 2 days. Thousands of witnesses. Farmington was a lot smaller than only had a population of about 5,000, but that's well documented, but you never hear of it until recently.
Wow. Very cool.
You think that you're talking, was that Dulce you mentioned? Did you ever hear I think it was Dulce where they had, you talk about the underground military base. Did you hear that story, Steve, about we took some black operatives or ABC agent people and we actually went below and found aliens and actually got in a literal shootout with them?
Wouldn't surprise me. I've heard a lot of different stories. Laura Eisenhower, I don't know if you know her or not. She's President Eisenhower's granddaughter. She has a YouTube channel. She does a lot of different things. And she said it was like an open secret within the family that Ike was one of the ones that made a deal with the Greys. Supposedly there was a meeting. It was Aleister Crowley, Hitler, Winston Churchill, Harry Truman, and Eisenhower, and they signed some sort of agreement with whoever the leader of the Greys is, I guess. And in exchange for technology, they allow them to do what they continue to do, apparently. And again, that's...
I had heard that story, but I didn't realize like Hitler and everybody else was involved in.
Yeah, it's an interesting story. But
and
get her on sometime. She tells a fascinating version of it.
I'm going to have to look her up. And some of that just kind of makes sense because if anybody looks back in history, I remember the United States. We had the American, the Sherman tank, which was pretty much a straightforward bulldozing. It had the turret on top, of course, and that was like our weapon during the war. But then Hitler's tanks, the Panzers, we couldn't believe at how they could, the technology, how better that tank was. Now, we won the war, of course. We were smarter. We figured it out. But how those tanks, though, how they could go over any terrain, they could pivot, the entire tank could pivot. And it was really for the longest time, Steve, and everyone listening, where they could not fathom where they got that technology. Because at the time, we were the hands down leader in technology.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the way technology progressed, say, go back to the 40s, you had Kenneth Arnold sighting in 47, Roswell crash right around that same time, and the others kind of followed suit. And then you look at the leaps and bounds we made in technology from the 50s just to the 60s. We had transistors. We had the integrated circuit. Everything was getting smaller and faster. And then you look from, the 60s to the 80s, microprocessors. And now we've got, cold fusion and all these things. I'm not throwing any shade at anybody. We've got some smart people, some top scientists and things that work for us, but it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of this stuff isn't reverse engineered.
Wow. Yeah.
That's my opinion only. That and $5 will get you a cup of coffee. So.
Yeah. Here, I got my $2 coffee running around all day, and I didn't even have time to make any this morning.
The one I like from Starbucks, $5 won't even get it. I think it's 7 something. So.
Good grief.
It's crazy.
I was just, and I went in Starbucks not too long ago. I was going to get I need a new coffee carrying. That was the wrong place to go because I looked at a really cool one, and I bring it up to the register. And of course, nothing's marked or priced. I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this and I'll put it in this. And I get back and they said $42.95. I'm like, what the hell type of coffee is this? And they said, the cup you bought was $35.99.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, thanks for marking it. I'm thinking $10, $12 at the most.
For like one of those souvenir mugs that they have.
Holy cow. You're buying the name.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you are. And not to get off topic, there's a program I watch called How America Was Built, the food that built America. The Starbucks story is pretty cool if anybody's a history buff and how America was shaped, in industry and in the food industry in particular. It's a very cool show. But yeah, so.
Yeah.
And that is an amazing story. And when I lived in the Pacific Northwest, I've been to that original Starbucks there at Pike Place in Seattle. And it's, you think it'd be like this big shrine or something, but it's just a little coffee shop. They had a good idea. They ran with it, and they're all over the place now. And when I was in Southeast Asia back in the early 2000s, there were Starbucks there in Cebu City, Philippines. And I was like, I want to go there. I'm used to that. And also they had a lot of stuff there that we used to have here the big deal over there. When I was in Cebu, they were opening a Kenny Rogers Roasters in the mall there. And we hadn't had Kenny Rogers Roasters, at least anywhere I've lived, in decades. And I went to the grand opening, and they were just excited, and they ran out of rice. And I thought there was going to be a riot. But it was great. They lined up out the door to eat Kenny Rogers chicken. They still have Shakey's Pizza over there. I don't know. They may still have those other places here. But when I was a kid, Shakey's was the place to go. They had the guys that wore the boater hats and the the striped shirts that looked like a barbershop quartet or whatever. And they had a piano player, and it was a fun place. It was like kind of like Chuck E. Cheese, but more adult themed. And they still had Shakey's over there. Now, I haven't seen the Shakey's anywhere I've lived in a long time. They may still
Wow.
be there. But
Wow.
you were going to ask me something, Krista. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, I was just going to say about Starbucks. From where I sit right now, within 10-mile radius, I know there's 4 of them.
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
Comedian Lewis Black talked about that somewhere, I think it's in New York, there's a Starbucks across the street from a Starbucks.
Mhm.
He said, we've reached the end of the universe when you can walk
Oh,
out
yeah.
of a Starbucks, across the street, and walk into another Starbucks.
Yep. That's true.
And I do what I can't talk to everybody in chat, but a couple things I just had to bring up for just a couple people, which is fine. Steve's channel is Among the Missing. If somebody wants to drop the link, it's not that other channel. So
Yeah.
just
I'm no longer associated with that
Yes.
channel in any way, shape, form, or fashion.
So
That's all I'm going to say right now.
no, that's plenty.
But,
That's enough.
I'm doing this same thing, but better over on my new channel. Another easy way to get there, atmyt.com. 5 letters.
Yeah. And we got some great mods.
Subscribe to your new channel. And I see already your new channel has like 55,000 subscribers already. Holy smokes. You know?
I've got a big fan base.
Yes, you do.
That other place, I took it from, I think it's about 10,000 when I started over there. Less than 3 years, I took it to over 250,000.
Wow, that's
and
fantastic.
I was the only one narrating, so they were there. People like my voice for whatever reason. I don't get it. I've never liked the way I sounded, but I get people that tell me I have chronic pain, I have PTSD, I have fibromyalgia, I have that panic and anxiety, I have insomnia. Your voice helps me relax.
Mhm.
And I've had people apologize. Sorry, I fall asleep listening to you. Hey, that's good. You can go back and watch it again.
Yep.
The way I look at it, my voice is a gift that I was blessed with it. If I can bless other people, that's what you do with a gift.
That's right.
And then the missing people, that'll always be a passion of mine.
Mhm.
And it's, again, I've talked about my autonomy, but the only people I answer to are the Heavenly Father, God above, the families, and the people, the loved ones of the missing themselves,
Mhm.
and my audience. But
Yeah.
I have a dedication to that. That's been laid on my heart to do, is to keep these people's names and faces out there and to not let them be forgotten. Because anytime a parent outlives a child is a tragic thing. But in a lot of these cases, they have no closure. And
Right.
can you imagine the torture to go through that you don't know? I mean, at least if they're found deceased, you could have an urn to put on the mantelpiece, or you could have a grave where you could go and visit and leave flowers. But the not knowing, that would have to just absolutely destroy and rip your heart and soul out.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And we started the show talking aliens. Oh, and I did want to drop a little note here that good old BMR. I'm proud to say, Steve, that I am also one of Steve's writers across his illustrious.
One of the best. I'm going to toot your horn here a little bit, BMR, but BMR and I are working on a book together. Watch for that soon.
Mm.
And then also, he mentioned that he writes for me. We did a thing over on 13 Past Midnight. I had, I think it was, 10 or so amazing but true Bigfoot stories that he wrote and I narrated. And he's also the writer, or one of the writers for my new true crime channel. That's right. I'm diversifying. I want to have, so there's a lot of overlap. If you took a Venn diagram, you've got missing people, you've got the paranormal, you've got UFOs, you've got true crime. There's a lot of overlap in the middle of that. And the new true crime channel, we don't have any content up over there yet. It's all in the works, but it's True Crime Breakdown. You can find it here on YouTube. And again, I got lucky. I was able to get a 5-letter domain. tcbyt.com will take you to the YouTube channel. So
awesome.
I think I have 3 subscribers over there now. So that one's
I'm one of them, I think, too. You know,
and I'm one, and I know who the other one is. I think. But go subscribe to that. Set your notifications on. There's big stuff coming up over there. We're doing something different that's never been done with true crime that I know of, and I think you're really going to like it.
Yeah.
Sounds kind of funny, Steve. You're all of your everything that you have going on kind of sounds like us Texas Front Porches crew, huh? BMR.
Yeah, it's just,
we got everything going on ourselves.
Well, I all those things are things that I have an interest in. I've had a paranormal interest since I was a child. Missing person cases. The first missing person case I was ever aware of, Dennis Martin. He
Yeah.
disappeared in the Great Smokies, Father's Day. And I was about the same age as Dennis, lived in the same town. And that was the first time in my childlike mind I thought, a kid can go missing and never be found. They never found him. They never found any
Wow.
trace, really. And said this, I didn't know any better. I mean, I'm like 5 years old, and I think I was 5 going on 6. Dennis was 6 going on 7, I believe. And Father's Day in the Great Smokies, we went to the Smokies all the time. And I was thinking, well, we don't live that far from the Smokies, which was about an hour by car. I thought maybe he wandered down here. So I'm out riding down the country road that we lived on my little Schwinn Stingray, looking for Dennis Martin in the bushes and stuff. And I followed that case from literally day one. And still, I think my sister-in-law has them. I've got scrapbooks of clippings out of the newspapers. There was 2 local papers in Knoxville at the time. Of course, it was huge local news. And it's just, again, it gets back to that not having any closure. I saw an interview with his dad on one of the local stations from East Tennessee. I think it's probably the 40th anniversary or so of Dennis's disappearance. And it was just the most heartbreaking thing. He sat there and he said, I'm pretty much sure, that he's not coming back. But he said, there's a part of me that hopes that one day there'll be a knock at the door. I'll go and open the door up, and there'll be a young man standing there. And he's thinking, it's probably another reporter or someone wanted to talk to me. Yes, can I help you? And this handsome young man would say, Dad, it's me. I've come home. And boy, that just, tore your heart out. And that guy, his dad passed away, I think in 2015, I want to say on my birthday, which is Halloween. And, he went to his grave not knowing what ever happened to his son. And it just, and I've met the man.
Hard.
I've met the man in person before. I took drafting classes in vocational school as a part of high school, and he was a draftsman at one of the places we went on a field trip to. And I was walking through, and I saw a picture of Dennis on a desk, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and he comes over and sits down, and I recognized him, and I introduced myself and shook his hand. But he was haunted. I mean, you could tell, and what parent wouldn't be?
Right. Yeah, that's awful. I personally, I would want to know, that at least they've crossed and they're on the other side, not knowing if they're alive.
Well, you can't even start the grieving process. You can have them declared dead. Right. They do that a lot of times for purposes of the will or insurance and things like that, but you don't ever really know. But a little kid, he didn't go off and start a new life.
Sure.
He didn't decide, because that happens. I've covered cases where years later they found him alive somewhere with a new identity and a new family. People can have all kinds of reasons for just walking away, just opting out.
Right.
But with a child, that's just it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, it is. And when you talk about among the missing and you talk about true crime, not to know or have that closure. I mean, you can suspect that a person has passed on, right? But until you find that body, right? Or if somebody miraculously appears on your front porch, I can't imagine having a kid and going through that for some of these people, Steve, decades, right? I mean, literally decades.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I mean, when my daughter was little, she went missing for a few minutes one time. She was hiding. She was having fun, and I'm panicking because the playground we were at, it bordered a green belt where there's a lot of hiking trails, a lot of people around, and they had some half-buried tractor tires there for the kids to crawl through. She'd crawled in there and heard me yelling for her, and I'm running around going all crazy. But just that instant, that fear, you look around, where's my kid? She was just right there, and she'd literally just crawled into those pipes, but for whatever reason, I didn't look in there.
Yeah.
And her mother stayed there where she was at. And then I took off and went down in the green belt and asked people, "Did you see a little girl about this high?" And it's just the most empty feeling that you can imagine when you don't know where your kid is.
I actually had the same thing happen with my son. He was probably 3 years old, and I was cleaning house and I jammed the music real high, real loud. And the kids were his other siblings, my stepkids at the time, were outside playing. He was out there with them. And I went to look for him 10 minutes and he was gone. So what scared me the most is when I called the police and they asked me what he was wearing, and I was so frantic I couldn't remember what he had on.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thought. Fortunately, they found him down the road. Everything was okay. And then later that evening, kind of funny story, but the police officer brought me a latch lock for my door.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Caught mom busy and went out to explore.
Yeah, and that's scary.
Yeah, and I don't even know how I would be. I'll tell you a quick little story. And I'm not correlating human beings with pets or animals. Now, our animals are our, for those of us that don't have kids, that's our kids, right? And even if you have kids, they're part of your family.
Sure.
And when it comes to a child being missing, or even a loved one, my brother, my mom, dad, whoever, but years ago, I was in my 20s, and I got 2 Siamese cats. I was married at the time. Peter and Patter were the name of my cats. And I was not a cat man. The wife talked me into it. I got 2 Siamese that ended up being my best buddies. I taught them how to fetch. I mean, they were so cool, right? So I'm at work one day, and I live close by where I live. My factory, the plant I worked at the time, was right by my house. So at lunchtime, I would go home. So when I get home, it looked kind of odd because the back door was open, and I went in my house. My house was ransacked, and someone broke in and stole all my stuff. Broad daylight.
Wow.
Now listen, you guys. I got home at 12:30 at lunchtime. This happened before lunchtime, and I lived across the street from a school and a church at the time.
Wow.
Nobody saw nothing, and my big screen TV got stolen. My furniture, every phone that I had in the house was gone. Of course, the creepy curio cabinets, Krista, with all my spooky stuff. No, they didn't touch that.
Right.
That was still there.
Well, that's good. All the other stuff you can replace, but the creepy curio, I've got some Walter guy and stuff like that myself.
So that was cool.
Take my TV, please.
Yeah, well, now those were haunted. That's another story for another day. But anyway,
they might have brought those back.
Yeah. But I'm looking for Pitter and Patter, and I can't find them. I cannot find them. My stomach felt. I got that pit in my stomach. Where are these little guys? And then, of course, I hear all these stories about people that abuse animals, and I reluctantly opened the microwave, thinking that they did something obscene, or the stove. So these cats were gone, you guys, for 2 days, and very sad. And the thing is, I didn't know what happened to them. Then all of a sudden, I hear meow, 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 and these 2 cats were so scared. And what happened, that event, it was so traumatic for the 2 cats. They were both balled up underneath one of my couches, which they didn't take. And they were there for like 2 days and did not say a word until they realized that finally it was safe. And I got them out, and they were so happy to see us. And I was like a kid in a candy shop, knew that they were alive, Yeah. So just if you equate that to a loved one, your kids, I can't imagine how I would have felt,
Yeah. It's
indeed. That's a frightening prospect.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, yours ended up happy.
They did. I was a happy guy. So
yeah.
Enough of the sad stories. But I'm thinking about that. It was a very dark day for me. And so see, we're talking about the missing and stuff. We started a show with aliens. Now, again, we talk about the missing. It could be anything. We can go over that, but I would have to say that alien abduction has got to be one of these reasons for these people that don't go missing. Like they just disappear, never to return.
I've had people ask me, what is it? Is it animal predation? Is it serial killers? Is it Bigfoot? Is it portals? Is it UFOs? Is it the government or some government doing something? And just pure misadventure. People overestimate their skill and their ability to survive in the wild. And the short answer is yes. It's all of those. It's not a one size fits all thing, but there are cases where there is a paranormal, supernatural, UFO, some sort of otherworldly aspect to it. And there have been stories. I covered a story that's been a couple of years ago about a child that went missing in South Africa, and he talked about being in another place, but he was in what he thought was a building. But then when he looked out the building, he was in a craft and he was like flying around and stuff. And I was at a UFO conference last March in San Francisco. I'd been asked to speak there. And that was my talk. I gave the parallels between people that have gone missing and were either found alive or came back, and what they remembered or didn't remember. And it kind of lined up almost perfectly with people with abduction experiences and what they either did or didn't remember or don't care to talk about. So it wouldn't surprise me if abduction, that type of abduction, is not a part of some of these cases.
Sure.
I mean, look at Betty and Barney Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's not what Saucer Cult, that channel, looks into, but I know those cases and stuff. They had missing time, several hours of it, and that's the fascinating thing to me. Both with the missing people and abductees is the missing time.
Yeah.
Where were they? What happened? I had an episode of missing time myself when I was a teenager. I've still got about 3 hours that I could never account for. I don't want to know what happened. People have asked me about that. Have you ever considered hypnotic regression? I just, whatever it is, it obviously didn't affect me too much, and I'd just rather not know, because then it might probably give me PTSD or something. But I'll go ahead and tell that story. I lived in a subdivision at the time in East Tennessee, and it was being built in 3 stages, 3 phases. First phase was completed. We had just moved into a new house in the second phase. The third phase was farther up the hill, and the only thing up there was a paved road that wound around and went up to just a bunch of wooded lots that were for sale that hadn't even been cleared off. A kid up the street, he was a year younger than me. I think I was probably a junior in high school. And we were out riding our bikes one evening, and we rode up there just kind of riding around. And we were riding down this paved street, nothing but wooded lots on the sides. And I remember hearing a metallic noise of some sort in the woods. And I kind of looked up. And then the next thing I remember, still on my bike, still pedaling, my friend's still right beside me, but we're going the other direction. And it was dark.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't say a word to each other. We went down the hill. He went to his driveway. I went on down the block to mine. And my parents were worried, like, where have you been? It's after 11 o'clock. And when we went up there, it was like right around 8. So again, there's like 3 hours there that I have no idea where I was or what happened. And this person experienced it with me. We talked about it at some point later. The guy's name was Danny. I said, Danny, did something weird happen the other night? And he said, yeah. He said, I didn't even know what to say. That's why I didn't mention it then. And that's kind of the same boat I was in.
Wow.
But he had the exact same experience. He heard the noise too. And then the next thing we both knew, still on our bikes, still moving, but going the other direction 3 hours later.
Crazy.
What happened?
Wow.
Who knows?
Quick question. Why do you think that if all these people are being abducted, is it like, what is it about them that the aliens are attracted to? Do you think?
Well, I've heard some interesting theories on that, but one of the most interesting on 13 Past Midnight and on Among the Missing, I had a couple of guys from Sound the Shofar Messianic Ministries. They study the Torah, but they also study the Bible. They believe in that Jesus, Yeshua, is the Son of God and the Savior. But they had some really interesting things to say about all that. And they think that one of the things that the aliens want, it could be really the only thing that makes us human and separates us from the animals, is a soul, our compassion, our empathy, our love. And maybe that's what it is. I don't know if they have some means by which to extract that or what it is. And if you consider, like they do, that this, again, a theory, but it could be the Nephilim, the fallen angels. Well, again, we have things that they don't. We have a soul. We have free will. Again, it's fascinating to think about. And I'm an insomniac, have been since early childhood. That's the kind of stuff that rattles around in my head at night when I should be sleeping. Yeah,
I hear you. I mean, it makes kind of sense. I've always wondered that, is it DNA, but I'd never thought about a soul.
Yeah. And then if you, and we'll get into this tomorrow night on your show, but I'm just going to mention it a little bit here. If you get into the Fae theory, there are things that the Fae need from humans to continue their race. And we'll expound on that tomorrow night. Join me with the Bonds and the Booze and the Woo tomorrow night at, I think it's
8 p.m. Central.
8 p.m. Central, 7 my time.
Yeah.
9 o'clock for you East Coasters.
Yep.
But it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be talking to Fae and how everything kind of can fit under that umbrella if you look at it from that angle.
Yeah.
You talk about that too on the Fae, and again, we'll save that for tomorrow. But everything does come together full circle, in my opinion. Even with, like you say, the mist, you've got. I think everything's on parallel planes, if you will, or different dimensions, right? You got cryptids, the paranormal, ghosts. You've got all these strange happenings in the universe that I don't
Mhm.
think. I think it's not by coincidence,
I
right?
don't believe
Where
in coincidence. There's
Me
synchronicities, but there are no
yes,
coincidences.
Mhm.
absolutely. When you see Bigfoot in an orb, well, you hear that story. Then you
Yeah.
hear a dog man in an orb, or you hear all these different sounds, or you hear things that
That happens a lot.
preserve. Yeah,
This Glimmerman creature, whatever that is, the predator-looking creature. Bruce Maccabee, a big UFO guy, his wife was deer hunting with a bow, and at the same time she was having this Glimmerman, whatever you want to call it, see-through creature in another tree that she could see and observed, and I took pictures of. While this was going on, just on the other side of the woods where she was at, there was a high school, and out on the football field, I think it was a marching band was practicing, and they had some sort of UFO encounter, something in the
Wow.
sky. And yeah, I've heard of that. A lot
Mhm.
of places where Bigfoot happens, so do UFOs. Look at Mount Shasta. I've been up there. That's a weird, weird place. Can't wait to go back. And it's some people say it's like an airport for UFOs, but
Wow.
again, a lot of Bigfoot activity. Same
Yeah.
thing, Mount St. Helens in Oregon, or sorry, Washington. I lived in St. Helens, Oregon, which is so named because you can see Mount St. Helens, which is in Washington. But I went
Yeah.
up to Mount St. Helens and saw that devastation. Well, you had the Ape Canyon attacks there back in the
Mhm.
20s
yeah.
where they thought they were fighting
Yeah.
ape men. I believe that was Sasquatch, Bigfoot, whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it.
I
But
do too.
again, Mount St. Helens prior to the eruption, which was either 1980 or 81, they had a lot of UFO activity there. Same with Mount Rainier, same with the Gifford Pinchot National Forest, same with Mount Hood, same with Olympic National Park, Olympic National Forest. There's
Yeah.
Bigfoot activity, there's UFO activity, there's ghosts and hauntings and other cryptids and things.
Yeah.
There's a common thread there, quantum entanglement, if you will, that somehow ties all that together. We just
Mhm.
haven't figured it all out yet.
Right. Do you believe like the portals that that side they all enter through the same portal, or do you believe there might be a portal for ghost, a portal for Bigfoot?
It might be like, like a hallway that splits off.
Yeah.
Bigfoot go this way, Dogman this way,
Right.
ghosts
Right.
up the middle.
Or do
I don't
you
know,
believe they
but
all come through the same?
it's possible that they could all use the same one because I've heard some
I personally
interesting
believe they
story
use
about
the same.
portals. If you look at some of the things that were going on at Skinwalker Ranch,
Hmm.
can't remember the name of the first couple that lived there, but the lady was doing dishes looking out the kitchen window. She saw what appeared to be a portal open once, and there was a man sitting at a desk doing something. He looks up and notices her and does something, and the portal closes back.
Hmm.
Another time, she saw a portal open up, and what was a dog man or some sort of a two-legged wolf
Hmm.
dog-looking creature steps out of the portal and walks across the farm, and then it
Yeah.
closed back up. So who's to say? I mean, maybe that's their expressway, that's their subway, that's how they get to
Yeah.
where they want to go. And that's been accounted in some of the missing cases too, that maybe people have accidentally stepped through a portal. Some of the people that have come back have talked about they were walking along, they were on the trail, and suddenly they're not on the trail anymore. They
Hmm.
look around, there's no trail behind them. They have no idea where they're at, how they got there. And in some cases, they've heard the search and rescue people yelling for them. They could even see them in the distance. They're waving and yelling back, but it's like they can't see one another. Like
Right.
there's a rift in time and space there. These people are one place, these are in another. You can see
Sure.
them, they can't see you. Fascinating. I interviewed a lady years ago that had experience when she was a little girl where she was walking down the street to go to a neighbor's house that just happened to have a soda machine on their front porch. It was a way to make a little extra money. Plus, it was like the neighborhood hub of activity. Well,
Yeah.
she was walking along, and all of a sudden, she passes by this empty lot. And she's like, I've never noticed this before. I've got to tell my friends about this. We can
Hmm.
play kickball or whatever up here. Well, she goes and gets her soda, and or on her way to get there, she passes by a man that says, "Oh, lovely day, isn't it today?" Or it's just some casual
Hmm.
comment. She says hi back to him, and then she gets up on the porch to get her soda. She looks back, the man's gone, the empty lot's gone, And she
Wow.
said, it dawned on me. I was like 12. I knew there was no empty lot there. I grew up on this street and suddenly
Mhm.
here's an empty lot. So she thinks she walked through something, and where this empty lot was, where this man was that said hi to her. And she said, probably somewhere else, there's a man that said hi to a little girl that walked up the sidewalk and was gone. And
Wow.
she likened it to two pieces of silk, and that you can kind of see through them. And sometimes, like if they're close
Mhm.
together, you can see through both. And when they separate back apart, sometimes part of the pigment or whatever's on one piece of silk kind of sticks to the other, or
Yeah.
maybe briefly. It's a really fascinating story. And I'd never really considered that because I had some sightings and stuff when I was a kid. First, what I thought was a ghost sighting, full body apparition, when I was about 5 years old. I saw a kid run across the street, come down into our yard. And if you notice toddlers that have just barely mastered the art of walking, they'll start running and don't know how to stop and they just fall. Well, that's what this little guy did. But when he hit the ground, he was just gone. And
Yeah.
I didn't take my eye off the spot. We lived exactly 212 yards from the road. And I know
Wow.
because I measured it later when I was doing BMX sprints. But I was about 100 feet away from where I saw him. And I walked straight to the spot. There was nothing there that I could have mistaken for a child, nothing there
Wow.
that no hole that he could have fallen into, absolutely nothing. But I know what I saw. And I thought about that years later. And I even did research into that road. It was named after my grandparents. They had a dairy farm there. I
Wow.
talked to all my cousins, relatives. There'd never been any kid that passed away on that road that met the description. Plus, he was wearing clothing that was pretty much period to the time. This would have been early 60s.
Mhm.
And he was wearing like kids, like the little blue ball cap, a little white button down shirt, blue shorts, white shoes. It was just as clear in my mind. And
Wow.
there's no way I could have not seen what I saw because it was a kid.
Mhm.
But I come to the realization the last few years that maybe that was a time slip or something. I saw something from another time,
Yeah.
another dimension, uh, somewhere where a little kid ran down the street and across the street and fell in the yard. And maybe when that happened, he saw me and then who's that guy standing over there? Or who's that other kid? And
Yeah.
maybe that's why he fell, because he's trying to figure out who I was and what I was doing over there. So was it a ghost? Was it a time slip?
Sure.
Residual energy? Who
Yeah.
knows? But I know what I saw. That's
Great.
the most I can absolutely agree with, is I know what it'd be like
Mhm.
somebody putting your hand on a stove eye and you burn yourself and somebody tell you, oh, that's not hot. I know what happened. I was
Right.
there. So,
Right.
but
Wow.
again, no clue as to what it was. Now, my grandmother, she was a self-prescribed gypsy witch, or described rather. Again, I don't know where the gypsy came from. She was born in the Cades Cove area, the Great Smokies. Figure there must have been some old country connection in there
Mhm.
somewhere. But she was intuitive. She told fortunes. She read tea leaves, coffee grounds, would feel the bumps on your head, which is kind of like palmistry. It's a forgotten art.
Mhm.
Now it's called phrenology. You can still find those old ceramic heads that tell what the different areas of the skull mean. And I asked her about that because she was well versed in spooks and folklore and witchcraft and all that. And I said, what do you think that was? And she gave a very abstract explanation, but one that still kind of rings true. She said, sometimes you see things that are meant for you.
Mhm.
Sometimes you see things that are meant for other people. And then sometimes you just see things that you may not know what the meaning is, except in retrospect, if ever. She was a wise old woman. And
Yeah.
that comes again, I know what I saw, but why did I see it?
Right. Right.
That's the, but really that's why I'm sitting here today. That started my lifelong quest on looking at ghosts and the paranormal and things,
Mhm.
because it didn't scare me at all. I was just like,
Yeah.
wonder what that was. That's not supposed to happen.
Yeah.
Little kids don't run into the yard, fall down, disappear. And I started looking into ghosts and things like that. Found books by old Frank Edwards and later Jim Brandon, Lauren Coleman, uh, Charles Fort. And once I found those Fort books, there's just one measures a circle beginning anywhere. That's my
Mhm.
favorite Fort quote. And
Yeah.
that's true. Pick anything in the paranormal, you can start anywhere and start looking into it. And it seems like you'll eventually come full circle. And
Yep.
that's where
Yeah.
I think that string theory or that quantum entanglement comes
Mhm.
in, where it's all related. It's like the ley lines that are popular in the UK. You can take those ancient standing stone sites and places where they've seen and experienced cryptids or
Yeah.
flying saucers. It all lines up, these magnetic lines or some sort of energy lines that encircle the globe. It's not just in the UK.
Yeah.
You,
I would
you
agree.
know, and we've got about 2 minutes before we have to go to our 5-minute break. And, you're talking about the portals, and here's the theory that I've got. I used to think that portals were only opened up in outer space, or maybe in like big fields, meadows. Jessica talks about the meadow all the time, or an open plot of area in the woods, right? But I've been doing this for a while enough where I get enough stories, talk to enough researchers where how we always see how a Bigfoot just materializes from a tree. I'm
Mhm.
beginning to think that trees are alive, and maybe a tree is also a portal for these things, right?
I've heard that. I talked
Mhm.
to a girl who's that she felt Shasta's call. I can't remember. She's either from Texas and was in the Bay Area, or she's from the Bay Area and was in Texas at the time. It's on my Among the Missing channel, my interview with her. But she felt Shasta's call, dropped everything she was doing, went and bought camping equipment, survival equipment, and went and lived on Mount Shasta in a tent for 5 months. And she
Wow.
calls them the tree people. It's what I think of as Bigfoot or Sasquatch.
Yeah.
But she talked about sometimes she would see them like look out from behind a tree or move behind a tree. Don't take your eyes off of it. You go straight to it. There's nobody there.
Hmm.
It's like they would peek out just to maybe gauge your reaction.
Yeah.
They let you see them just to see how you're going to react. And then if you react friendly or curious,
Mhm.
then maybe a little more and a little more.
Sure.
And Rob, one of those stories that you wrote for 13 on that Bigfoot compilation, there was a guy that was looking at a stump. Oh, I think he was
Yep.
deer hunting or something. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden the stump suddenly stands up and walks away. And sounds like a Bigfoot. So
Yeah.
are they able to disguise themselves as trees? Can they shapeshift like that? Or is the tree the portal? Again, the trees are alive. I mean, everything that's alive, I think there's a
Mhm.
connection there. And that's like the wood. Susan Woodcarver's in here. She will tell you that wood has a spirit to it. She carved something here for me and sent it to me. I mean, look at this. She is
Wow.
such
That's
a talented artist. I
beautiful.
mean,
Wow.
but
Yeah.
not only is she in the wood, it's got a rune of protection on the back for me
Wow.
there, but she's taken something that was dead and made something living in it. There's a spirit in this wood. She brought it out. And the secret, you carve away everything that doesn't look like a wood spirit. That's my
Yeah.
joke.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you,
I do want to get back to that to start because we're running up on that 5-minute break. Of
yeah, you
course,
got to
we got to
get
do
me to
that.
shut up.
I just got to come in and say, Steve, we love hearing you, but we got to take this quick 5-minute break,
We
and
love
we'll be
hearing you,
back.
but shut up for a
Well,
minute.
yeah, right. We'll be back in 5 minutes and continue on with Steve Stockton
Yep.
among the missing. Be back in 5.
Four minutes to go, folks. 4 minutes. 3 minutes. We're almost there. Two-minute warning, guys. 2-minute warning. One minute. 1 minute.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show. Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob. Thank you for the great super chats from Susie B. Thank you also to Krista J for the super chats. Most appreciated. For those of you that say, hey, Rob, I'm saying hi, you're not saying hi back because we're streaming on Bigfoot Michigan Rob channel and Texas Front Porch channel. So hello to each and every single one of you. I appreciate your support and love you all. If I didn't get a chance to say hi and chat.
And I noticed there's a few on Blonde's Facebook.
And there's Blonde's Facebook. Thank you to the Blonde's Facebook. Yep. Thank you, everybody, no matter what channel you prefer. We all do it together. Mm-hmm. That's what we like to do. That's what we have to say around here. And on Mondays is Texas Front Porch, 7:30 in the East. Tuesdays, Van Buren Variety, 8 o'clock in the East. Beyond BMR, 9 o'clock in the East on Tuesday. Jason McLean does something called Mysterious Library on Radio AM, 10 o'clock in the East. Those three shows are Tuesdays. Wednesdays, Jason McLean questions everything, 9 in the East. We just finished up the Nephilim series. That was pretty awesome.
That was awesome. That was amazing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Steve. And then Thursdays,
all your shows are good, but I love those.
They're pretty cool. They make you think, don't they? They make you think.
I love it.
And Thursdays, we're back here, Brunch with Bigfoot Michigan Rob, 1 in the East. Tonight, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast, 9 o'clock in the East. Tomorrow, you need some more woo with the booze, the Blondes, the Booze, and the Woo, 9 in the East. Fridays, and subscribe to the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Subscribe to Steve Stockton, Among the Missing, and his other channels, 13 Past Midnight, and the True Crime one as well. Fridays, we did the Fridays. Saturday, Jessica Jones, my pal, my buddy, Spaced Out Radio on the weekends, 10 o'clock in the East. And speaking of Spaced Out Radio, go to the Brunch with Bigfoot Mr. Rob Facebook page, because he's doing the second annual Spaced Out Radio fan party, May 19th through the 21st. Be a great gathering. That's at the Golden Nugget Casino. I might be making an appearance. I was 100%. Now with Mama all tied up, I hope she'll be walking by then. And I even seen Steve on the guest list. I don't know if you're going or not,
Yeah,
Steve.
I
But
don't know if I'm going to be able to make it this year, but I'd really like to go. That's going to be fun. I lived in Vegas for about 10 years. I'd like to go back. My daughter lives there now. I if I could make it, I'd love to be there.
yeah, absolutely. Good time. We'll see about that, and boy, I tell you, the prices just skyrocketed. They're having some other event that same night, and gosh, it's
Yeah.
it is way it is way it is, but it's always a good time down with Dave, and subscribe to Space Out Radio, one of my favorite shows to watch
Yeah,
as
love
well.
Dave. That UFO conference that I spoke at in San Francisco that I was telling you about, Dave was my opening act. So I loved that. Dave's
Yeah,
a great guy.
he's a great guy. And again, great guys, everybody in chat, super chats. Of course, are open to, once again, thank you to Crystal J and
Mhm.
Susie B. We do
Yes, thank you.
appreciate that. Yes, we do.
Yes, thank
We
you.
very much do.
I do have a question for Steve, real quick.
Sure.
Yeah, go right ahead, Krista. Just
Going
go
back
right ahead.
to right before we went to break, we talked about, I've seen on Facebook recently where you see trees moving. I don't know. Have you seen those videos?
I've seen those videos. Now, I don't know if it's something that's explainable or if it's inexplicable,
Sure.
but it looks like they're moving of their own accord. Now, maybe
Mhm.
there's a crane or something that's out of the shot that's dragging them along, but it doesn't look like that. They're
Yeah.
not swinging. They're just
Right.
moving.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know. I don't know. It's just it's kind of one of those
And
things
we
that
were
makes
talking about that. I mean, they are living organisms and things, but I
Right.
think there's a spirit in them, like this carving that I was showing you that Susan did for me. That's the spirit that was in this wood. This spoke to her when she was carving it, and that's what brought it out. And the same, I'm a semi okay guitar player. I'm mediocre if I practice every day, but I've picked up guitars before, and there was either something in the wood or something in the luthier that carved that guitar that put a magic in it. Because I picked up other guitars, they don't have that feeling. I
Yeah.
remember one time when I was a teenager, I walked into a used music shop with a friend of mine, picked a really expensive Gibson Les Paul off the wall, a used one, and I just started playing it. And like every note would break into this little symphony of other notes. And my friend
Wow.
looked at me and he said, "How come you don't play like that all the time?" And I said, "I didn't know I could." And
Wow.
it was like $800 or something out of my range at the time. I think minimum wage was $2 or $3 back then. And I just hung it back up on the wall. But I've often wondered if I'd bought that guitar, what would have happened? Where would I have gone with that? And
Yeah.
there's certain ones that are that way. My brother, he collected Martin guitars. I've got a Martin Johnny Cash signature sitting over here. And they do make some wonderful guitars, but he would say, as good as they are, there's some that are just special. He had one from like the 20s or 30s that cost as much as a house almost, but that was just there was a magic in the wood and the person that put it together. And on a lot of these battlefields like Gettysburg and
Mhm.
places like that, Civil War battlefield, they have what they call a witness tree, a tree that was there that saw those things happen. And part of whatever happened there, the bloodshed, the turmoil, the tragedy, it gets caught up in that. And Cisco's told me about trees there at Gettysburg where they see spirits of soldiers sitting up in these trees.
Wow.
And so there's a connection to every living
Oh
thing.
yeah.
I believe that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And the only reason I'm going to bring this up, because, excuse me, this resonates, the beautiful Susan Woodcarver wood carving. I've told this story before, and I'm not going to go into the depth of it, okay? Just briefly, I used to collect things like that years ago when I was married. We had a curio cabinet. Like I was talking about, those things in my house did not get stolen. One of the few things. And as it turned out, long story short, the wife and I started seeing shadows in the house
Mhm.
right after collecting all of these things. We just started to know we had like bad energy, bad vibes throughout the house. Things started to go wrong at work. A couple people even passed away. We were getting sick. We never were really sick people. So we actually had somebody come over, and like a medium, I believe it was back then. I guess that's what they called them back then. They came over and immediately got a bad vibe when he went in the curio cabinet room at the house. And he said, "Where'd you guys get that stuff?" He said, "Well, we collected them on all of our
Mhm.
these antique shops from different states, our state." And they asked if they've been blessed, and we're like, "Blessed." I mean, now we're I mean, back then I wasn't even involved with any of this way back then. I was in my 20s. Yeah, you got to get those out of the house. That's why you're seeing these shadows. I would see shadows in darkness. The shadow would precede the darkness. So you know what? I put it all in the garage. A couple months later, the shadows stopped. Positive energy. Work got back on track. So we were like, wow, I guess so. So I put these objects in the corner of the garage. So when spring came for spring cleanup, I opened the garage. And again, everything's in the far right corner. And I started working in the garage, doing whatever. Then all of a sudden, no kidding, Steve, and there's no sun shining in. Again, it was enough light for me to work in there. Back wall in the corner, again, dark. And guess what I saw? Those dark shadows emanated. So I call into the house, Rachel, you're not going to believe this. So she comes out, what? I said, these damn objects, we got to get rid of them. She goes, what are you talking about? I said, just wait a few minutes. 5 minutes goes by, whatever. She goes, you're nuts. There's nothing going on. Then all of a sudden, she sees the object, the shadow. She freaks out. I take all the things out of the garage and I put them in the back of my pickup truck and I took them to a dump and threw them in the dump, right? Don't know if that's the best thing to do because now somebody else probably has this or if they got burnt. And Krista, you could answer this. I don't know if burning these things is good or bad and set this out into the atmosphere. I don't know. Yeah. But that was one of the creepy stories I got with paranormal.
My opinion, I'm glad you didn't burn it, myself, but I mean, taking it to the dump, I mean, it's trash. So if somebody goes through it, that's on them. So, you had to do what was right for you. Take care of it. Yeah.
So I guess long story short, Steve, I'm glad that what you got from Miss Woodcarver, she put that emblem on the back, or it's good to go for you.
Yeah, it's a rune of protection, and I'm going to cover up the back here because I don't know if she wants me to tell her true last name.
Yeah,
Woodcarver is what she is and what she does, but she actually has a different name. But that's a rune of protection that she was told by whatever she's carving here to put that on there for me.
That's beautiful. Absolutely,
it's an awesome piece.
Close there. That's just
That's intricate.
That's her creation, but it was what was already in the wood hidden underneath those layers. It tells her what it wants to look like when she carves it. It's it's amazing.
Beautiful.
And awesome. I can speak to that too, Rob. There are things that have attachments to them. Mm-hmm. One of my parents' hobbies, they were antique dealers. They had an antique shop. They had booths and other antique malls and stuff. Sometimes they would bring stuff home or maybe even out in the garage. And I couldn't wait for it to get out of there and get to the shop or wherever they were going to take it to, because it had that energy. It had that aura. I'm open to things like that, I guess. I would see things, hear things, feel things, and I could usually figure out where it was coming from. And that bureau, what are you going to do with that? We're taking that to the shop. When? I want it out of here, please. It's disturbing me. And then I've had that happen. I was in an antique shop in Portland one time, and it was in an old house, and they had what had once been the kitchen. It was set up with all these antique kitchen gadgets and dishware and things. And I picked up an old egg beater, one of the ones with a wooden handle and the metal, where you turn the crank. Yeah. And the minute I touched this, just in my mind's eye, there was this angry old woman, like, what are you doing here? Why are you touching that? That's mine. You leave that alone. You put that down. And I think it was somebody that had passed on. She was attached to her stuff that had probably been sold at an estate sale or whatever. She doesn't know she's gone on. She wonders why people are in here handling her egg beater or mixing bowls or whatever. I just dropped it and walked away. But that's psychometry, when you can touch an object and get a feeling or something off that. So again, even something that's not alive anymore that has been alive, or in some cases a totally inanimate object that's prefabricated out of non-living materials, I think it can have attachments too.
Yeah, I would agree. Anything can have attachments, people and everything. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think too, with this cryptid paranormal, do you think that certain people, Steve, and even Christopher, this are more apt to catch these attachments? Do they seek people that are weak-minded, or it doesn't matter? Or
I don't think it matters, but a lot of people don't have any idea, what's out there and what you can accidentally bring home with you and things. And I don't think it's weak-minded, but just they don't have your guard up, or you don't know what to be careful of.
Right.
I carry crystals in my pocket.
Mhm.
I've got an iron bracelet that I wear when I'm out in the woods because iron is poison to the fae. They won't mess with you, and that comes from the old Celtic traditions. They would put iron spikes in the corners of their property to keep evil spirits and things away. No different than hanging a horseshoe above your door for good luck. There's more to it than just good luck. That iron
Absolutely.
is there's reasoning behind it.
Mm-hmm. When a lot of times when we do private cases, I do use horseshoes. I have horses, so we have horseshoes and horseshoe nails all over this place, and I'll use them at different private residences, and they'll put them in the windows and things like that. Absolutely.
And I've read where, particularly when they're trying to keep their babies from being stolen by the fae, they would sometimes either put a piece of iron in the crib, or maybe even build the crib out of iron, or pin the kid to the sheets so that they couldn't be taken away too easily.
Yeah.
Again, we'll get into that more tomorrow night. Join us over there on Blondes and Booze.
Yeah, I think
night.
I'm gonna have to make a special appearance on this one. I can't get enough Steve Stockton.
You're more than welcome to come on.
Listen to me now. I'll be
Steve,
on with him tomorrow night.
Well, I'm kind of kissing your butt a little bit since you're kind of technically my boss. No, just kidding.
We're partners. We're partners.
Yeah, I know. I know. I'm just kidding. You know me. I'm a big jokester, but and I didn't really mean to say people that don't have their minds are weak-minded. I think a lot of people. I think you had just mentioned it. There's a lot of people walking around out there that aren't even aware that there's something shady shadowing them, for lack of better terminology.
It could be. I mean, I'm sure people that have special needs and things, it probably happens to them too. But again, it's a lack of knowing what you're going up against, and how it can act with you and react with you and attach itself to you. And again, technically, the way I believe anything like that, it only has the power over you that you give it. Now, you may have to do some things to get rid of it, but ultimately you have final say. I smudge my house regularly. I put salt in the corners and then sweep it out. There's lots of things you can do to protect yourself. Prayer works, lighting candles, whatever works for you. It's one of those things where there are no real hard and fast rules, but there are certain things that seem to work.
Yep. And it's about your intention too.
Intent. I was just, you read my mind. I was just going to say it's the intent, because I've heard of people where they hire somebody, they're having all this activity. One lady I talked to, she had somebody come in and smudge. So they saged the house with a turkey feather and all thing, but she didn't have the right intent. She didn't know what she was doing, the person that they came to cleanse the house, and it made the activity worse. It just angered whatever was there. And then I think it eventually took like a priest or an exorcist or somebody to come in and actually bind these things and banish them to where they couldn't come back, where the other thing just stirred them up.
Yeah.
And if there's one word I've learned from both Krista and Brandy, my two partners as well out there, I think Brandy's out there, the word they always, ever since I started getting involved more and more with this paranormal, the word intent, they must have drilled that into my head a million times. And that's what but your intent, though, is really not even with just the paranormal or cryptids. Your intent is whatever you want to do in life. Very strong word.
And intent can be accidental too. You can do things unintentionally, literally. That's what it sounds like. You can, by messing with the wrong thing, by doing the wrong things, by tampering with stuff that you don't know about. I mean, literally, it's like once you open a doorway, open a portal, invite something in, it's like trying to get the toothpaste back in the tube if you don't know what you're doing. It can be done, but it's going to take you a long time, and it's going to be a slow, tedious process.
Yeah,
man, I don't know if that could be done, Steve. Putting the tooth, Go ahead. If they could offer me $1 million, and I would probably not get that task done. It might take me 1,000,000 years, but I'd be dead before cash in.
Right. Not saying it's impossible, just very, very difficult and
very
difficult that you'll do it.
Yeah. There's a lot of, people that they watch the TV shows and think it's all fun and glamorous and, all that good stuff. And then, they don't know what they're doing. The TV shows make it look fun, and then they go to this haunted location and they take something home, but they didn't know to take.
And they didn't even know that they opened themselves up to that. And I've had people tell me that just by watching paranormal shows, they've accidentally invited stuff in. I think you and I talked about that before. How many people in the audience have a welcome mat?
Oh,
Now that's
Right.
supposed to be for guests, but technically that's inviting anything that can read that mat into your home. I was on, I think it was Amber's Paranormal World or
yeah,
Paranormal,
great show.
Yeah.
whatever the name of her show is. Sorry, Amber, I blanked on it. But we were talking about that, and somebody said, "Well, if I turn my welcome mat upside down," she's like, "No, no, no. Then anything underneath will see it and come in." And that's kind of a Southern tradition too.
Mhm.
There are places in the South. It's more in South Carolina in that area, but there's a color called haint blue, and people would paint the underside of their porch that color blue. And
Mhm.
that was when if a spirit came up to your door and tried to get in, it would see that and think it was the sky, and it would confuse it, and it would go up through your porch roof instead of coming into the house.
Yeah.
But my granny, she would block her keyholes with pieces of garlic and things like that. And that was to keep witches, according to her. Now
Mhm.
she was a witch, but there was different kinds of witches.
Sure.
But the kind that you didn't want coming into your house, they could come through the keyhole. But if you plugged that up with garlic or something else, again, the intent, that would keep them from coming through the keyhole anyway.
Yeah, and I do remember watching that show with you guys and about the welcome mat. And I think if I do remember correctly, you don't want to turn the welcome mat upside down because you're talking to perhaps
Whatever's
hell.
underneath, what lurks
Right.
beneath. Yeah, the even worse stuff probably. So if anything, get one that says "go away."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like the
Yeah.
welcome mat, for the demonic, they need to be invited in.
Yeah.
So you have that welcome mat. There you go.
And
Welcome.
that follows along with that whole vampire tradition.
Yeah.
You have to allow them in. What else? The black-eyed kids operate that
Mhm.
way,
Yeah.
like the demonic things, and a
Mhm.
lot of that is a perversion of the Christian way of thinking. You have to invite Jesus in. These
Right.
things have to be invited in.
Right.
It's all connected.
It is.
Everything is connected. And I know you guys are going to talk about the Fae tomorrow, but I had a question though, which you might know about. I know a little bit about, again, I'm learning, I'm like a sponge. Are elementals, are they like spirits of the forest?
I think so. If you look into mythology and a lot of that stuff, I mean, it may just be a myth, but I think there's some reality in that too. But there's naiads, dryads. I think the naiad is the spirit of the water, or guardian of the water. Dryad is the same thing for the trees. But you have elementals, and again, I think they all fall under that same umbrella. If you look at some of the cases uh, of fairy activity, the
Mhm.
places like the Celtic countries where that was and probably still is almost a religion and everything. I mean, there's some of those elementals are big hairy giants. Well, there's your Bigfoot. It's one of
Yeah.
the Fae. Read account of I think it was in the early 1800s where some people encountered some little men in a horseless carriage that came down out of the sky. They were the Fae,
Yeah.
but there's your UFO things. It's all, and when you start digging into that, we'll get into this tomorrow night. There's all this hierarchy. There's different kinds. There's pixies. There's goblins.
Mhm.
It's not this little Tinkerbell gossamer thing
Right.
that floats around and sprinkles fairy dust. Everything's been Disneyfied, and people don't. Again, you don't even know what you're dealing with when you're dealing with stuff like that. And most of it, they hate humans, but they need something that we have. Again, the UFO thing, it's all connected.
Mhm. Yep.
I
Well,
think yeah, no, really. Again, I always say this, especially on the late night show. We do this because everything, there's a connection to everything.
mhm.
And I think that the more open minded to these things, I think the more you can learn and observe, right? I mean, when I used to walk in the woods, I never looked for anything until I
Mhm.
had an encounter and started doing this. Now
Yep.
I'm always my head on a
Now you're
swivel,
aware.
just looking to be aware and
Mhm.
find certain things, you know?
Yep. Yep.
And I think that once you have an experience, your mind is more open to other things.
Mhm. Yeah. Before I got into, this weird stuff, we have horses, so we'd ride. And, you always watch your horse, whenever you're out there, your horse will tell you what's out there. And I'll tell you what, that totally makes sense to me now that I've gotten into this weird stuff. I mean, a horse will tell you more than just a deer's out there or. Yep.
And there's a lot of animals are in tune too. Cats, dogs in particular
Oh yeah.
can see things.
Yeah.
The only real shadow person encounter I ever had was a place I lived in Oregon. My dog, Mulder, who's sitting over here beside me, he saw it too. I was trying to put a link in there for that. I thought it would make it a link. That's the True Crime channel, tcbyt.com, or you can look for True Crime Breakdown. But the house I lived in, I was walking into the kitchen one night. There was just a night light on in there, and the way this place that I lived was, there was a laundry room, kind of a mud room over here, then a dining area, and then the rest of the kitchen. Well, I was walking in there. Mulder, my little dog, was with me. I saw a shadow. It looked just like a person's shadow, but there was no person to make the shadow. It came out of the laundry room, across the dining room, through the kitchen, and went out the wall behind the stove, which would
Wow.
be the garage. But Mulder saw it. He didn't bark. He didn't growl. He's standing there wagging his tail. And I told my landlady about it, and she said, "Oh, that's my deceased ex-husband. I see him all the time. He won't bother you. He won't hurt you. He hangs around here." And he had died very tragically in a car crash. And so there you go. Is that what it was? She felt that that's what it was. And again, it didn't bother my dog. But then there's other times. Here recently, I was talking to, I believe it was. Let me think back. Anyway, there was a crash in the. I was talking to Midnight Society. She and I are working on a project together. She's my favorite person in the whole world, by the way. But we were talking in my other studio. I've got Studio A and Studio B. Studio A is where my recording studio is set up. This is all video stuff in here. And there was a huge crash. It sounded like almost like a china plate fell against a metal table or something, a table leg. It was loud. Mulder heard it. He starts growling. She heard it through the microphone. I never did find out what it was, but I know there's activity in this house. When Sandy and her husband lived here, Sandy saw all kinds of things. I've seen things since I've been here. So what was that? I don't know, but I heard it. The dog heard it. She heard it. So it wasn't in my head or anything, but there wasn't anything that had fallen. Never did find a single thing that wasn't where it was supposed to be.
Yeah. And you know what I find interesting too is that your dog was kind of wagging its tail. I believe they can tell if it's negative or
Yeah, I believe so.
something.
Like I said, the crash, it made him growl, and he's looking at the same spot I am. But when we saw the shadow figure, and I didn't feel any malevolence or anything.
Right.
It was just like somebody walking by, but you could only see their shadow.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've got a horse that we've done reenactments for years with, and there's one location that it's very haunted. We've investigated the place, but I mean she blows up over there. And any other time you can put a kid on her, but you take her over there to that area is for little short reenactments. She's not the same horse.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So they definitely pick up.
They sense things. They see things. They see a whole different spectrum of light and color and things that we do. So who knows what they may see spirits walking around.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would ask you what the significance behind this is, Steve, because I know you've done many of these stories in the past about the person that turns up missing, and maybe they're hiking with a group of people, and if there's 8 people in the group, a person out of the group, all of a sudden they look around. I did a story on this, in fact, as well. They're just gone. Don't know where they're at. Can't find them. They bring out a search party. And then they find the person's clothes neatly folded on a rock or a stump. And I mean neatly folded, not torn off, not like they were attacked by an animal and it's shredded. I mean folded like your mom as a little boy or girl would fold your clothes and put in your drawer. I still, to this day, of all the stories I've heard, when I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together, that's got to be paranormal, right? It's not the person. It's not the thing that had this person go missing, right? I mean, what is that?
Well, and it happens often, and not in every case, of course, but there's been several cases where they found their clothing folded and left there. And if somebody, I think if they're having some sort of mental breakdown, or if it's hypothermia setting in, they're doing the paradoxical undressing, they're not going to take the time to fold their clothes up neatly and put them in a pile.
Right.
Again, that's one of those, I think there's a supernatural element. And in a lot of cases, if they don't find the clothes, they find the footwear, they find boots. They found
Mhm.
where people have apparently taken their boots off, set them side by side, and then continued on several miles in the snow or through the deep woods. And I don't know, I have some theories on that too. Said I lived in Portland. There they have the Shanghai tunnels, which are there was a
Mhm.
real thing at the time. It ran underneath downtown Portland all the way to the river, and I'm not sure if it was the Willamette or the Columbia because they both meet right there. But and that's where that term Shanghai comes from. They were Shanghaied. Portland was the wild, wild west back in the day. You go into a bar, you go into a brothel, whatever person, maybe they picked you at random or picked you if you had muscles or by the way you were built or whatever. You got something slipped in your drink, and then you went in the back or behind the bar or whatever. You went down a trap door. Well, I've been down there. Some of those tunnels still exist, and you can tour them. And one of the things that was really just compelling, interesting, there's one section there where you had to be careful where you walked because the floor was sandy, but there was still broken glass there that had been there for 100 years or more. So you've been slipped something in your drink. They drop you down this chute, but before they did, they took your boots, they took your shoes.
Mhm.
So if you did come to before you were on a ship headed for the Orient, you're in the dark, you're disoriented, you're drugged, you don't have any shoes, and it's dark and the floor is covered in broken glass. You're not going anywhere anytime
Right.
soon. Well, you think about that. If there was something out there that wanted to hunt humans, but wanted to give them a sporting chance, what better thing to do than to take their clothing, to take their boots,
Mhm.
and give them a running start? They're not going to get far. They're not going to get away from you necessarily. Kind of like if you ever read that story in school, The Most Dangerous Game, where the
Mhm.
guy, the big game hunter,
Yep.
decided the ultimate hunt would be to hunt humans. I think there's something that in some of these cases wants to hunt humans, but wants to be a little sport to it. So, well, I'll give you a head start, but I'm going to take your boots and take your clothes. Now you run naked through the woods, and let's see how long it takes me to catch you.
Right. Right. Wow.
Again, who
Mhm.
knows? But that's one of my possibly plausible explanations. But it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be a human. It could be something else that wants the thrill of the hunt to catch you and then extract your soul or your DNA or whatever they're going to do with you. Something to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know, yeah, talk about the soul, extracting the soul. I mean, growing up, I liked all monsters and I watched all sorts of creepy stuff, including demonic possession. I mean, I could not watch the Exorcist with Linda Blair. Now I finally watched it like a year ago, and I'm
I
like,
watched it when I was well into adulthood. I think it came
you
out, what,
know,
73 or something? I was 10. No thanks.
you
And it
know,
still
right?
bothered me even in my 40s or 30s or whenever I
Well,
saw it.
and you know why it bothers me to this day? And now I know more about the past several years. I know more about everything. I mean, I liked this stuff as a younger guy, but I didn't really invest into it like I do now. Now I know more, and I'm like really creeped out. And the thing about that movie, that really does happen. That's what the
Well,
scary
Mhm.
thing is, and that's why I don't even like watching demonic stuff at night.
absolutely.
I watched that movie at like 12 in the afternoon.
Excuse me.
It was snowing outside. I had all the lights on, and I watched it finally. And it still creeped me out with the sun
And
brightly
that's the
shining.
same with me. If I get the hint of anything demonic going on, I'm out. I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
I'll visit a haunted location. I'll look for cryptids, but if there's demons or something like
Mhm.
that there, I run the other way. My reasoning, my older brother, I was a late in life unexpected baby. My only sibling, an older brother, was 17 years older than me. Well, he was a Pentecostal minister. And one of the parts of his ministry was a deliverance ministry, and they would cast demons out of people at church. And I was always out the door when that
Yeah.
started, because in the Bible, when Christ cast demons out of people and put them in the swine ran off the cliff and jumped in the water. I didn't want something to come into me or attach itself to
Sure.
me, so I hightailed it. But he has stories of stuff he saw, he witnessed, that he was a part of, that would absolutely curl your hair
Mhm.
and or curl your toes or knock your toenails off or something. That is real. And you
Yeah.
don't mess with stuff like that unless you know what you're doing.
What you're doing.
Like, and
Absolutely.
again, the intent, the knowledge, what's in your heart. Because remember, even in The Exorcist, it was stronger than one of those priests.
Mhm.
at least. I don't remember it very well. I only watched it once too.
Yeah, there's
But,
a documentary out about that. It was actually happened here in St. Louis, the true original story with the exorcism,
mhm.
and I believe it's the Booth brothers put out a documentary called The Haunted Boy.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's got
I've heard of it. I've read about it. I haven't seen it. Again, I'm kind
yeah,
of
it's a
gun
good
shy, but
watch.
it's real,
Mhm.
and a lot of people don't realize that. Oh, it's a demon. Let's
Very
play
true.
with it. Or I knew some girls that as teenagers they tried to conjure a demon through a Ouija board, just messing around. Well, they conjured 13, and something happened to every single person that
Wow.
was there. Deaths of family members, car accidents,
Mhm.
broken legs. You
Yeah.
don't play with stuff like that,
Nope.
especially if you don't know what you're doing.
You don't go
You shouldn't
looking
play
for it.
with it if you do know what you're doing.
Right.
And these people
Absolutely.
that provoke and challenge and stuff, you better be where you need to be before you take on
I agree.
something that
I agree.
is a little bit farther down the rung than God and Christ Almighty. There's power there, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but
Yeah.
against principalities, against the rulers of darkness, against wickedness in high places. That's not talking about people. That's
Mhm.
talking about demonic spirits, powers, entities.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah,
very
Scary
true.
stuff.
There's
yeah,
I'm sorry, Rob, go ahead.
really quickly. And I either Jessica Jones told me this, or Brandy. It could have been Brandy, or it could have been Krista. But one of you girls was telling me that even if you watch a demonic possession show, and all of a sudden there's chanting going on the show, and you got your TV on, you're listening. One of you guys told me, whoever, turn it off, because you really don't know what they're
Absolutely.
saying.
Exactly.
And that could
True.
be something that really could affect you.
There's
And
a-
you would think watching TV, because everybody watches. I mean, the people watching this show probably get it, but the average Joe Blow on the road would say
they
you're
don't.
full of crap. But
Yep.
really, I imagine that if that's being aired into your home, broadcast, right, audibly,
Yeah.
Same
that's
thing.
a
Exactly.
problem.
A
Yeah.
chant's a chant, whether it's recorded or whether there's somebody
Mhm.
saying it. And if I'm reading stories of something demonic and it has, or a Satanism and the ritual sacrifice and things, and it has something in Latin, I don't even want to read it. I don't
Yeah.
even want to read it in my head. And somebody had sent me an album one time that had all this weird esoteric recordings on it, and one of them was some sort of invocation by Aleister Crowley. I'm not going. You couldn't pay me to play
No.
that record.
Right. And that's the same thing, even too, not just, your TV, but paranormal investigators who go out and they, do EVPs, with the little voice recorder. We do that all the time, but even listening to them, at your home, that's even opening up doors. That's very true.
Yeah, again, if you don't know what you're doing, these people that provoke and challenge, and I
Yep.
hope you're ready for the results of that, because I'm a firm believer in you reap what you sow.
Yep.
And if you plant a kernel of corn, you don't get a kernel of corn back. You get a
Right.
stalk, and on that
Right.
stalk there's a dozen ears, and on those ears there's hundreds of kernels of corn. So
Yeah.
make sure your harvest is worth reaping. Make sure you're bringing stuff in that you want around you.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
mess with it in the first place.
Yeah, I got to read this too. One of my great friends, Jean Hudson, she lives in Upper Michigan, several miles from me, says the Emmys had satanic dancing and rituals going on this past year. People thought it was just a dance. And I tell you what, Jean, and I concur, it was not just a dance. In fact, coming up is probably going to be a Jason McLean questions everything topic.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are things that go on, like the Abramovich lady that was doing the spirit cooking. Oh, it's performance art.
Mhm.
It's a
Yeah.
lot more than that.
Right.
It's a mock of a ritual sacrifice and things.
Mhm.
And those people that do that sort of thing, it used to be behind closed doors, and they go in the woods or they go to a cave. Now it's just right out in the open. They hide in plain sight and they push it as entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, to put my tinfoil hat on here, but I think that's all a part of it. That's to
Yeah.
lure people in, to drag people into it.
Absolutely, especially our young people who are clueless, who are into that.
I have no idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
A part of me is glad I know this. And then, of course, there was back in the day where I knew nothing. I don't know what I like better. I suppose I like it now because now I know really how to protect myself right.
Hmm.
It explains really a lot of things that happened to me in my past that I had no clue about until you investigate the stuff and get into this field. And I think one thing to preach to everybody is just be aware of your surroundings, right? No
Yep.
matter we're talking about the missing, we're talking about ghosts, the devil, demons, talking about anything.
Absolutely.
You really, it makes me more aware wherever I go today.
Especially in the woods, and you would not believe the people that go hiking and things that don't bother to look up. I mean, certainly you want to look down to make sure you don't step in a hole or get on a snake or something like that, but look up. I mean, there are animals. Big
Mhm.
cats will hide in a tree and jump down. And I tested that theory one time in the Smokies. I was on a fairly popular hiking trail. I climbed up a tree right next to the trail, and I sat up there and I watched countless people just walk right on by. Not a one of them looked up. I mean, you could have seen me. I wasn't even hid. I was just sitting up on a tree branch
Yeah.
about 12, 15 feet up. Again, if I'd been a predator animal, if I'd been a predator human, if I'd been up there with a deer rifle, I could have shot every one of them. I've never
I
do
admit
anything like that.
you know, I'm new to, the cryptid researching part. And, when I've went out, I didn't even think to look up. I'm looking ahead and looking down, as you said. But yeah, that's very true. I should be looking up.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And look behind, turn around behind you sometimes. Make sure
Yeah.
there's not something creeping up on you.
Right.
It
There's
just
some stealthy things out there, animals and
Mhm.
other stuff.
Sure.
and it just reminds me of the story I always told my brother when he told me. I'm not going to tell the story. He shot a deer, tracked it, blood. It disappeared at the base of a tree. Doesn't know where it went. And this is and he knew about Bigfoot because he believes my story. Of course, but
Mhm.
and so he asked me what to look for in the woods. And again, deer disappears, blood trail, and he sees where it falls, and the outline, the impression of the deer is right there in the ground. And he's like, "Where the hell this thing go?" Then what do? He looked up and he saw the blood spatter or the blood trail went right up the tree, Steve, and everyone listening. A lot of people have heard this, but then guess what? It disappeared.
Yeah.
Wow.
Never found the deer.
Yeah.
So what was it? Was it a big cat? It jumped to another
Well, I
tree?
know he knows it was a
Unlikely.
deer. Yeah, right. What snatched the deer? He knows it was a deer, of course, and that's the mystery today.
What snatched it? Where did it go?
Yeah, that's right. And there was no hunters around. That nobody came in and took it that fast. Impossible. And he looked around for tracks and just boom, boom.
Gone. Wow.
And there's other cases like that where people have gone missing. They find their
Yeah.
footprints, say in the desert, in the sand. The footprints just stop. There's no car tracks. There's no footprints or any prints of any
Yeah.
other kind. And I've tried this when I was a kid. You cannot walk backwards in your footprints very convincingly. I've tried to do that to fool my friends. You can get it pretty close, but you can still tell by the gait and the overstep and things. And there have been cases where cattle in the snow walked right up to the tree line, and then the prints just stop. And then there's no other evidence of where the cattle went. But if they looked up, tree branches would be broken and snapped off. Something took it, but not into the woods, but up out of the woods.
Hmm. Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Pretty
As
interesting stuff.
Go ahead, Krista. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I suspected, I knew we would go over the hour and a half, and I could probably go 2 more hours, but I got to change the ice machine on my ma pretty soon because I got here living with me now with long story. You guys have heard it. Go check out. My mom broke her ankle, and I got to hook up her machine because she's got a cool ice machine. It wraps around her leg. It's not a cast. It's one of these casts filled with water, and it's a machine. It keeps the swelling down. So I gotta change that every 2 hours, 2.5 hours, something to keep it nice and cold. But Steve, it's such a pleasure always having you.
Always. This is what I do. You put a microphone in front of me, and I don't know when to shut up. But I hope I'm entertaining. I've seen a lot of good comments.
Oh yeah.
Here, Rocky. Thanks. I appreciate all your support. And come over, check me out on 13 Past Midnight, Among the Missing, and True Crime Breakdown, and Saucer Cult. I got so many channels I don't know what to do. And I've got books. My books are available on Amazon. I don't have copies of them here. Strange Things in the Woods, which will start out as 2 volumes, Strange Things in the Woods and More Strange Things in the Woods. That's combined into one. My Strange World, which is some of my personal paranormal experiences. And I've got National Park Mysteries and Disappearances, Volume 1, 2, and 3.
And as you know, Steve, my portion of the book is done. Now I'm just waiting on you. Me and Steve are collaborating on something, which I'm excited about, Steve.
Me and Rob got something great cooked up. You're going to love it. And I'm also co-writing with a couple other authors right now. So lots of good stuff.
Very cool.
I've got at least 3 books that I hope will be out before this summer.
Very cool.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. I want to say thanks to the Super Chat, Susie B. and Crystal J. I do appreciate that. We all appreciate that. Thank you so very much. And thank you to everybody for tuning in. I love each and every single one of you, because without you guys, this would be boring, right? I need an audience.
I'd be sitting here talking to my dog.
You know, right.
Me off the street.
I think Steve could talk in a closet with nobody around just to talk, because the guy's got the greatest stories, the greatest voice among the missing. Among the missing.
And Rob, you're no slouch yourself, buddy. I love working with you. You've got a terrific mind, and you're a wonderful, wonderful writer. And I thank you for the opportunity to come on your show. Krista, I'll see you tomorrow night on the Blondes and the Booze, but it's always a pleasure to be here with you. And I'm really looking forward to a deep dive on the Fae.
We are too.
Yes. I'm looking forward as well, Krista and Steve, and for everybody. That's a good way to put this puppy to rest. Another great show, another great guest. Check out Steve with Krista tomorrow. If you haven't subscribed to the Blondes and Booze podcast, you got to go check that out. Once again, for Krista, for Steve Stockton, we are out.
See y'all.